Hi, welcome to another episode of NYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. When it comes to a natural disaster, whether it's the response or recovery phase, often getting people the financial resources, whether it's through grants or financial support programs, is really tough, especially when you're a remote community or you're a small rural community. In this episode, I speak with Sandra Uwantege Hart about what she's doing with Oxfam and another company that she works with, Emerging Impact, in order to help bring blockchain, cryptocurrency, as a viable alternative to the response and recovery. So stay tuned as I talk to her about what she's doing, as well as the interest that other communities and countries are showing with her model. Hey, Sandra, how are you today?
I'm great, Leanne. How are you? Thanks for having
Good.
me.
I'm good. And whereabouts in the world are you right now?
I am located in Vanuatu, which is one of the Pacific Island countries. Very difficult to find on the map, but if you draw a straight line up from the north of New Zealand, you will find Vanuatu.
Wow. So I would say it's a little humid there.
Oh, it's very humid, very hot. Beautiful weather depending on what you like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get started, can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Sandra Uwantege Hart. I am Rwandan American, so I'm not from Vanuatu. And I have had around a decade or so of experience in the international humanitarian sector focused on natural disaster response and recovery. And so I have a subspecialty in the delivery of payments, so financial assistance to people and communities and families that are affected by anything from super typhoons to hurricanes to earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts, uh, etc. And now COVID-19, of course.
Yeah, you name it.
So I have worked mainly for the UN. So I worked for the United Nations World Food Program for a very long time across the Caribbean, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific region, and have also worked in microfinance. And currently I have two jobs. So I am the blockchain innovations and cash transfer lead for Oxfam International, based here in the Pacific, in addition to being the co-founder of Emerging Impact, which is a consultancy company that works at the intersection of blockchain technology and humanitarian assistance.
That's great. Well, and that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you today. When it comes to disasters, especially on the response and the recovery side, getting, if the power's down, the banking systems are not working, people need money, they need cash. How is it, what are some of those challenges that you have seen in communities in your experience, especially when it comes to that financial piece?
Yeah, of course. A lot of the challenges that I see in this job, which, just for the audience, is essentially figuring out how to pay thousands of people that you don't know who have been impacted by a disaster as quickly as possible after the event. That really depends on how people typically spend their money prior to the disaster. So in peacetime, as we say, the infrastructure that exists at the country level. So how well developed is the banking system, or other things like mobile money and digital transfer systems or Western Union money transfer organizations at that level. And of course, the nature of the disaster itself, right? So if you have an earthquake that has, I worked on the 2010 earthquake in Haiti that has literally collapsed buildings and bank branches, that's quite a different context, compared to if you are responding to a drought where infrastructure remains largely in place, but the nature of the need is associated with the fact that nothing is growing and people need to buy imported products, perhaps to meet their basic needs. But of course, when we say context, it also depends on what type of country has been struck by the disaster. So if it is what's classified as, which a term I don't really like, a least developed country, or a country that, is really in the early stages of infrastructure development versus a country like the US, that is very advanced in terms of goods and services and infrastructure. That also will impact the speed of delivery, and also the delivery channel of those financial payments. So it can be anything from cash in an envelope, paper checks that you take to the bank branch to cash out, to very advanced solutions, which sometimes can help you to leapfrog in limited infrastructure context, like using blockchain technology to transfer money to people in a way that the financial services infrastructure cannot. So there are a lot of options.
Yeah. So in your role, in what you are trying to achieve, and if someone's watching and goes blockchain, I have no idea what that is. Can you try and dumb it down and just say, as an option, this is a viable solution, and how it works?
Yeah, sure. I tell a lot of people that, blockchain, or the B word, for people who are intimidated by it, understanding blockchain technology is not really about understanding the architecture and the underlying infrastructure any more than we understand the architecture and the underlying infrastructure of the internet, right? We're on Zoom right now, but I'm pretty sure neither myself or you can explain to the audience how the World Wide Web works, right? But we are very much able to use it because we have access to applications, and an interface, basically a computer program that has been made easy for us to use. So with blockchain technology, it's really not about what is it, it's what can you do with it, and what can you do with the applications available to you. And so in this case, it's very important to state that, it's an emerging technology, it's moving very quickly. It's not appropriate for everywhere. It does require like a mobile data connection or the internet. But the uses of blockchain and these applications that I'm talking about, computer programs that run on blockchain, are extremely diverse. And for the humanitarian sector, the ones that are relevant are those that provide us with logistics and supply chain tracking. So using blockchain as a database to log the origin, the transit points, and confirm that goods have received at their intended final destination, and that the people who are receiving those goods, a bag of rice, for example, are able to confirm receipt in a way that is fully online and in real time. So speeding up processes and reducing costs by introducing transparency into the equation. And the humanitarian sector and virtually every single disaster response, including in the US, has historically been very much criticized for not being transparent about where the money went. And so the second kind of grouping of applications in the humanitarian sector that are of interest are in this question of humanitarian payments. So in blockchain, one of the first and best known applications, of course, was Bitcoin, which was originally created to allow for financial transactions at low cost, transparently, between people on the chain in a way that can operate independently of banks. And that is what is of interest to me in particular. So putting my Oxfam hat on, in Vanuatu, I created, founded, designed something called the Unblocked Cash Project. And this is taking humanitarian best practice. So what I was already doing, kind of this model of delivering humanitarian payments to people, setting the payment amount, making sure that it is delivered in a way that's accessible and easy for people to use, and co-designing a blockchain application that operates on a smartphone, a laptop, and that has a little payment card associated with it, with a technology provider together here in Vanuatu and together with the community using it. So what we were able to do was bring blockchain hype all the way down to the ground level and really ground it in people's behaviors, assess whether and kind of stress test the technology to see whether it could work in a place like Vanuatu where the internet goes off and on, and where people honestly do not have a high prevalence of access to smartphones. Up to 40% of the population does not have a bank account, and the use of debit and credit cards is restricted to about 10% or less of the population. So really seeing that if we introduce these tools in the interest of helping people receive help after a disaster quickly, you know, can we adjust these tools to the behaviors of those people? And can we allow those people to play a role in making the technology more accessible and more robust in places where people don't know what blockchain is, don't discuss blockchain and cryptocurrencies, but what they do know is if they can access assistance and buy what they need when they need it in their local shops with or without a bank account, then that becomes highly valuable to them. And in turn, their perspectives being kind of blockchain naive, you know, are extremely important because we know that there's a digital divide, right? Software developers do not know what it's like to be born in and grow up in a community where you may not have electricity or clean water or internet. So being able to really be inclusive and integrate that community perspective into the process has yielded an entire tool and approach to use blockchain as a blockchain application as a mechanism to deliver transparently, quickly, and to populations that sometimes the banks don't reach.
That's great. And so are you thinking that you're going to be expanding this program in the future to other countries, to other locations where Oxfam is working?
Yeah, actually, I mean, if somebody had told me at the beginning, you know, that this would expand so far from where we started in 2018 at the design phase and 2019 in the initial pilot, I never would have believed them. But the Unblocked Cash project has actually garnered international media attention as being the first cryptocurrency-enabled humanitarian aid assistance delivery system. And of course, the fact that it happened in Vanuatu, very remote Pacific Islands, has just kind of upped the credibility, you know, with kind of following this initial hypothesis we had that if we can do this in Vanuatu, then we can do this in many, many places because we've just passed kind of like a barrier or a series of challenges that we've surmounted here that are relevant for many, many areas of the world. So the project currently in Vanuatu has expanded from pilot to full humanitarian operation. And so it's currently serving over 20,000 people across more than 11 islands in 3 provinces across the country. And all of those people have these little plastic tap and pay cards that they can redeem at a network of local down to tiny, tiny vendors. Supermarkets, community shops, kiosks, down to women selling veggies in open air markets. There is a network of 350 vendors where people can redeem their cards to purchase food, household items, hygiene items, and even pay for transport. So we have banana boat drivers and we have taxi drivers and bus drivers that accept payments on their phones. And so what that means is that we have demonstrated scalability. So a lot of people hear about testing and piloting here and there, but it's very rare that these solutions can attain a level of scale that allows for other stakeholders and actors and partners to participate. So in addition to all of these people around the country, we also have 17 private sector, local civil society, and international nonprofit partners, including Save the Children, World Vision, the Adventist Relief and Recovery Organization. We have the Vanuatu Red Cross, you know, as part of the International Red Cross Confederation, is also delivering using this platform. And that has translated into concurrent pilots in Papua New Guinea. So really pushing the boundaries on that one in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, implemented successfully in Venezuela. A pilot was also implemented there to use cryptocurrency as a hedge against hyperinflation.
That's great.
in the context of Venezuela. So allowing people to maintain value by using digital currency instead of banks. And in mid 2020 last year, the project won the EU Horizon 2020 prize for blockchains for social good, which provides €1 million to scale and replicate the solution and kind of seed it across the Oxfam Global Confederation, which is great. And that's where Emerging Impact comes in, where, you know, my role at Emerging Impact has included facilitating an MOU with Oxfam to provide kind of a technical arm of expertise, not just me, to be able to roll out this solution in places where times are rough, you know, like Lebanon, like Cameroon, which has a massive refugee crisis. We have a conversation with a group from Myanmar this week. And we're also exploring other environments where delivery is difficult. So like Somalia, some of the Maasai and more traditional areas of Kenya, and places like Zimbabwe, etc. So the list is long, but it seems like the concept has been proved, you know, and although it's not a final version, every community will have something different to say about whether this works for them. And we need to stay open to be able to adapt these solutions to what works for people as opposed to what works for the provider, which I think is the origin of a lot of the problems that we have dealing with the banking industry.
Yeah. So I guess before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to mention that perhaps you didn't get a chance to?
Well, I guess I will mention something about the context of the international humanitarian space and why do we have to look for new solutions now? And the reality of that, and we see it especially with COVID, is that the resources that can be provided by our governments and by ourselves as taxpayers to help people around the world that are affected by crises that are not their choice, you know, but that significantly endanger the lives of them and their children, the money available to do that is dwindling. It has been historically going down for the last decade. And the number of people who need help in the face of now a global pandemic, increasing inequality globally, and climate change, the impacts of climate change, particularly around natural disasters, the number of people needing help is increasing. And so one of the reasons we're looking to new technologies like blockchain to increase efficiency and transparency and lower cost is so that we are able to do more with less, but also that we are able to do more responsibly and transparently with the money that we have. And that means people knowing where their money comes from, and the people like taxpayers, like yourself and myself, know where our money is going, you know, and who is receiving it, with kind of that guarantee that is not prejudiced by a government or a donor agency, you know, or, you know, kind of the obscure back end of where these numbers come from. It is all made available on a globally distributed ledger, which is the blockchain.
Yeah, that's great. Well, congratulations on your groundbreaking work that you're doing. And like you said, you didn't think when you started it was going to have such a big impact, but that's awesome. That's great. Obviously, there's a need. It's a solution to a problem. And I wish you all the best as you unroll this to other communities and other countries.
Thank you so much, Leanne. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.